the meeting of the Board of Trustees for Santa Barbara City College. I want to welcome you all here, and I note that all trustees and incoming trustees are present. We're going to take a number of items out of order today, the first of which will be the assumption of office of the governing board and the swearing in of the student trustee, and then we will move from there to the election of officers. At this point, I would like for the three trustees-elect to join me up on the stage. Wonderful. If you will raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and then please say your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. Support and defend. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. And to the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Congratulations. We have a student trustee to be sworn in. Ashley Jeter, would you come up, please? Wonderful. Sure. No, I thought since we've already gone through it, you could just have memorized it and just say it. No? Okay, if you will. I, Ashley Jeter, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. That I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Congratulations. Well, I think being a little nervous is really okay, don't you? Our next item of business, taken out of order, is item 1.4C, the election of the offices of President, Vice President, and Secretary of the, oh, wait, I have something to say before we go to that. It's become customary for the board president to offer some words of welcome to our new board members and to say a little bit about what we are about. You have, the four of you have just joined a very tiny group of legislators, unlike the Congress with 435. It's really hard to hide here. We're sort of always on display. And our task is to keep in mind the fundamental mission of Santa Barbara City College. What we're about has to do with education of the next generation as well as the current generation, but primarily the next generation. We take that obligation very, very seriously. The other day I was commenting at a retirement ceremony for the three trustees that you are replacing, and I said it's a lot easier to be a trustee during a time when revenues are being enhanced. It's a lot more difficult and stressful to be a trustee at a time when revenues are declining. And as a consequence, sometimes the debate gets more heated than perhaps it should be, but maybe that's to be expected. Out of that sense of debate comes a sharpening of the issues, and that brings me to the point of a board policy 2715, which I commend to your reading. It has to do with how it is that we sort of weigh through that difficult time. It is the board policy that guides our ethical behavior toward each other. And it is a critically important policy precisely because if we're to be effective, we need each other. If we're to be effective, we have to learn how to listen to each other. And those ethical guidelines help us remember not only the mission of the college, but also why it is that we have to conduct ourselves in a particular way. We are stewards of the public's resources. We are spending a lot of money for a very specific purpose. And what we have to remember is none of that's our money. It is the public's money. So the debate itself is very helpful and in the public interest. How we conduct that debate becomes critical because not only the public watches and sees how we conduct ourselves and forms an opinion about whether we are to be trusted with this. So I repeat my admonition of taking seriously our board ethics policy 2715 that will help us in many, many respects. Yes?
And board policy 2715 is in your packet
Yeah.
tonight.
In yellow.
In
In
bright
yellow.
yellow. Yeah.
That's become the official president's office paper color.
I am so glad to hear that. Well, to close, I am honored that you are here. I am honored to continue to serve. This is the first moment when I can actually and honestly say I'm a continuing board member, not one of the newbies. And we have appointed previously board membership mentors for each of you. Lisa is going to be a mentor for Craig. I will be a mentor for Veronica, and Marcia will try to corral Marianne. And mentorship is important because none of us is expert at this, and so we are a lay board, and so we need all the help we can get. Help is not limited to just the official mentors, but to anybody. You need help, ask. It's that simple. So congratulations and welcome.
President Hassel?
Yes.
Just one other clarification. I function as the mentor for our student trustee, as well as our advisor to our associated students, as well as all of the board. So our student trustee gets a host of individuals to rely upon.
We certainly do. All right, I open, we are at that point where we are to elect a president of this board. Nominations are open. No nominations, we move on. Okay?
Nominate Marty.
Marty Bloom is nominated. Is there a second to the nomination? Are there other nominations? Seeing none, we move to a vote. All in favor of Marty Bloom to serve as president of this Board of Trustees for the coming year, say aye.
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 Aye. Marty, congratulations. This is now yours.
I think before we go on to the Vice President and Secretary, I did want to say just a little bit for Peter, because I wanted to thank you for your leadership in these last 2 years. It has been, it's easier to look forward, let's put it that way, but on the other hand, it's good to acknowledge how much work you went through and how much you did, and I really appreciate it, and I know we all do up here. I also want to put a little label on you, and that is, I think without a doubt you're the most unflappable person I've ever seen in my whole life. It just, whatever came around, you handled it just very nicely. So I thank you for the countless hours you spent and for your unflappability. Is there such a word? There is now.
There is now.
Yeah. So thank you so much. So we will entertain nominations for Vice President. Marcia?
Lisa?
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Good, congratulations, Lisa. And we have Secretary of the Board of Trustees. That's going to have to, okay. I guess it's a vote, but it's a good idea. Go ahead.
President Lori Gaskin for this honor.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Yeah. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, you've got another job. Okay, we have a hearing of citizens right now on anything of interest to the public that's within the jurisdiction of this board. Do you have any slips? We have no slips, wow.
You're so lucky.
Okay, let's make this a habit. No, if anybody wants to say anything, you can. Minutes of the regular meeting of November 8th, and I guess this would just be for the people who were on the board at that time. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's just 4 of us, so, okay. Communications, these reports are presented to the Board of Trustees about various matters involving the district. And so we'll first hear from Dr. Dean Nevins, Academic Senate.
President Bloom, I'll have to get used to saying that now. First off, I'd like to say to outgoing or ex-President Hasland, thank you very much for serving on the board during some tumultuous events. That was really appreciated by the faculty, so thank you very much. And thanks to all the board members for working through some difficult things. And all I see is, like today, blue skies ahead, so I'm very happy with what's going on. Congratulations to the new folks. I think you guys are going to find this to be a very fascinating, deep, and rich experience. It's amazingly interesting what goes on at the college. So many things, you'll fill your head with stuff. You'll love it. So congratulations on your appointment and/or election. And also thank you for stepping up and serving the community. It's a very important role. My job is to report on the shenanigans of the Academic Senate. And so what I'll do is I'll come up here and tell you guys what we've been doing in the Academic Senate since the last time we met. And there are several items. We had someone from, Kathy Brown from the bookstore, came and talked to the senators about the importance of getting your book orders in time on it. It's very important because financially it allows them to buy textbooks back from the students earlier, because they know that the textbook will be used in the following semester, and so that allows them to actually provide cheaper textbooks to students. And the senators talk back to their division, so that's why we wanted to tell them why it's so important, so we can actually get the word out, so faculty can get their work orders in time for the next semester. We also continue to talk about a board policy 4160 and administrative procedure 4160, which is establishing, modifying, or discontinuing programs. This is a very important policy and administrative procedure, and it's making its way through the consultation process. You guys will end up seeing quite a bit of it. And it's how we will do program vitality, how we will terminate programs if we need to, how we create new programs, or how we modify those programs. And so we're working on a new policy and procedure, and of course that'll end up here. We talked a lot about the academic calendar. It was quite a spirited discussion. Normally what happens with the academic calendar, it just comes to the Senate, we look at it, it then just moves on. It's really kind of a non-issue most of the time. But all of a sudden, we decided to have a much deeper conversation about how student attendance is impacted by the calendar, what we should do about it, and after all the discussion, there was, believe me, lots of discussion, not only at the Senate, but also among the faculty at large, we decided to just approve the calendar as normal, and we'll talk more about it later, so, which makes a lot of sense because changing the calendar is a very serious decision involving many parts of the college, and it's not just, and also, quite frankly, it's not in the Senate's purview. So if we wanted to make a change in the calendar, it would require a much larger conversation. So we're going to find out more about what people want to do. The Senate was also interviewed by Dr. Eva Conrad. She's working on taking a look at our mission statement, and so as part of that, she interviewed the entire Senate as a body, and that was a very nice process. So any questions?
Okay. Any questions? I don't think so. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for a good report. Geneva Sherman will be giving us a report from Associated Students. And I understand that you have quite a few students this year who are participating, which is wonderful.
We do, yeah. We actually have a really, really wonderful group this year. It's probably, this is my third year on the Student Senate, and this is probably my favorite, not just because I'm the president, which is awesome, but it's just a wonderful, wonderful group of people, and they're all so eager to go out and help the students, which is what we're here for, so it's been really great this year. I am the president of the student body, and we have been doing a lot this semester. It's been a very busy semester. We elected our new student trustee. I appointed, along with our wonderful advisors, Ashley, who is a great addition to our Senate, so thank you very much. And we also had Dr. Eva Conrad, which Dr. Nevins talked about. She came in and did an interview with us so that we gave her our opinions on how the mission statement should be changed or kept the same or whatever we thought. We had a great talk with her. We also had Dawes Williams come in on November 31st, and that was very successful. We had a lot of students come in from just the students at large. We had a bunch of students come in to see him speak, and he talked for an hour and a half, which was, I told him he could have all the time in the world because it's very rare to get a chance to talk to someone who's in the position that he is, and I think we're very fortunate to get to hear what he has to say. So that was great, and then we also have something that we're going to be starting next semester is office hours for the Student Senate, so that students can come in and ask us questions, or if they have comments or concerns, they can come right to us and ask us, and if we can help them, then we can, or we can bring it to our advisors or bring it to whoever we need to bring it to get their needs met. So I think that that's a great thing that we're going to be starting next semester. And we also are starting, we've been doing a little bit more fundraising. We had a bake sale this past Sunday that was pretty successful, and then we also started selling the Access books. So if anyone wants to buy them, the Student Senate has them. And then we also have several ad hoc committees that go along with our Student Senate. So we have fundraising ad hoc committee, a Senate promotion ad hoc committee, and we recently just decided to add a sustainability ad hoc committee, which kind of is going to go more, reach out to the community a little bit more. It's going to be a sustainability and kind of wellness ad hoc committee. So we're going to be talking about bringing in different, I think the Make-A-Wish Foundation and different foundations within the community and kind of associate ourselves with them and get our name out there and could do work with them and community service. So that's my report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sherman. Liz Auchincloss, having to do with the classified employees. Liz?
Good afternoon, President Blum, President Gaskin, members of the board, and incoming members of the board. Congratulations. Our consultation group has met a couple of times since our last meeting here. We met once with Ava Conrad to talk about the mission statement. We have a couple of our members, including the CPC members, that will be part of the retreat. At our last meeting, President Gaskin came and talked with us about what's known as the ATF report, but you know it as the Accreditation Task Force report. And we had a good conversation with her. The other thing on your agenda today related to classified staff is the ratification of our contract. We've been in negotiations for a little more than a year now, and I want to thank the district's team, Pat English and Joe Sullivan and Bruce Barstock, plus the members of my team. And we had some stressful periods, some ups and some downs, but in the long run, we all came to an agreement, and we have a contract ready for you to ratify. Our membership has already ratified it. So hopefully you will also.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much. Thanks. And Dr. Gaskin, report from the superintendent president and secretary.
Thank you so much. I want to extend heartfelt appreciation to Dr. Haslam for the fine leadership that he has provided for the institution, not only for decades, but certainly culminating in the presidency of the Board of Trustees. It's not an easy job under any circumstances, and certainly over the past several years, it's tested the heart and soul and spirit of the institution as a whole, and you led magnificently. I might be biased because I have the honor and privilege of serving as president of this institution, but I thank you with great respect and admiration for what you've done. And to my new bosses, I am ecstatic to be working with you. And I know in your heart and soul that you have the mission, scope, and purpose of the institution just at the core. And as Dr. Nevins said, this is the most profound calling that we could be involved in. It's really inspirational, and you'll find that every single day. So welcome to our wonderful world. And I have some news that I wanted to share with you, and that is our Vice President of Continuing Education, Ophelia Ariano, is leaving to go to a sister college, and her last day will be December 21. And we wish her well. And Ophelia, it has been an absolute delight getting to know you and working with you. And we know that you will be incredibly successful. And speaking of continuing education, Ophelia shared with me that the scholarship committee met recently for winter quarter scholarships. There were 125 applicants, and 125 CE students were awarded scholarships for a total amount in winter quarter of $9,700. So that's really positive. You worked very hard to get that application streamlined and to get the money into the hands of those individuals who most needed it. So we're delighted about that. Second or third or fourth, whatever number I'm on, wanted to share with you that we have a process internally that is a call out for international education study abroad programs proposals. And that call was put out, and we had a number of faculty submit proposals, and the following have been selected for 13-14, academic year 13-14. 2 during the summer, 1 to Rome, Italy. It's film production in Rome, and it will be taught by Michael Stinson, who's a professor in our film and television department. And the second one during the summer is in Cape Town, South Africa, taught by Carrie Hutchinson in communications, intergroup and interpersonal communication, which I think all of us will probably end up signing up for. It sounds pretty exciting. Not that the film production in Rome doesn't sound equally as exciting. Winter break, history of the Vietnam War in Hanoi, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Matthew Mooney, who is our professor in American history. That is but a sliver of the excitement and the vibrancy of our curriculum, but that gives you a flavor for it. So pretty neat there. I wanted to also warmly welcome Ashley. She and I have had a chance to connect, and Geneva is an absolutely wonderful president, and you will find that Ashley is going to be a superb student trustee. These students involved in Associated Student Government are exceptional. And it's kudos to Allison and to all of you for that. So welcome, Ashley. And I just wanted to close by saying we in the academic world live in cycles. And these cycles are beautiful. They're quite celebratory. We welcome the new term with enthusiasm and excitement, and we close each term with some measure of exhaustion, because during that intervening weeks, there's a lot of energy and effort that goes out. And what Dean and Liz didn't share is we have an incredible cadre of faculty and staff and administrators who just put their heart and soul into this every single day, day in and day out during the semester. And you get to this point in time and everybody's pretty darn exhausted. And I just want to publicly thank Liz and the classified staff, Dean and the faculty, all of the administrators for an exceptional fall semester. It's been really, really great, and we've accomplished much. Toward that end, I had the opportunity to celebrate a little bit with CPC. I've been doing nothing but eating with my wonderful colleagues, but we went out for, I can't even remember where oh yeah, I do remember where CPC went out. Yes, and then Accreditation Task Force, we went out and ate a lot today, and then all of us are celebrating tomorrow with our holiday party, and you are all warmly welcome, and that's at 12:30. We have some special entertainment of which I'm not going to divulge, but it might have to do with somebody who might be sitting within your midst, but I'm not going much further than that because it's a surprise and you have to come. So anyway, lots of food. Bring a little bit of potluck if you want to share. We need food. Okay, that's it.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good report. From the board members, committee chairs, Lisa, do you have something from fiscal or?
Oh, fiscal, we covered the new calendar, edited, modified, updated calendar for budget that's going to incorporate the new bits of zero-based budgeting that's been discussed in CPC and throughout the administration. And we also went over the quarterly report and the audit, and we'll be going over the audit at the end of this meeting. So Joe, I'm sure Joe Sullivan will explain in detail what's going on there. That was our meeting this time around.
Okay. And we did not have a fiscal committee, facilities meeting, excuse me, because I was the only one left on it. So I met with myself, and it was a wonderful meeting, very short. And Marcia, you have a report from Ed Policies?
We did. We had an Ed Policies meeting, and we had a report that was very helpful from Dean on the in-progress discussions of the program vitality policy, which he referenced earlier in his report. It's really very helpful to us, I think, to hear those discussions partway through, so we can sort of communicate about some of the issues and think about them, and we will see it come back again as it has been further discussed by the Academic Senate, and looking forward to that. We also had a report from our administration on program review and a review of the process, both the descriptive matter that goes into program review, which is an assessment of each of our various departments and their goals and objectives and how well we are accomplishing them, and then the database information that goes into those program reviews as well. And I think that these two areas will be linking up, and I am personally excited about the way that we're going about developing this information and collecting this information to assess our success and improve our own offerings in as thoughtful a way as we possibly can. I would commend any of you who want to look at these and also look at, listen to the tape of Ed Policies if you want more detail.
Okay, thank you. We have a report for information from Craig. Where's Craig? Not you. Craig Nielsen. I saw the fear in his eyes suddenly. Yes, you need to give us a report right now since you've been here 10 minutes.
If I might introduce this.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's
Sorry,
fine.
tell Craig to. ready.
Annually, it's an opportunity to refresh ourselves in certain standards of conduct relative to the legal framework under which we function, or which you function as a board, and particularly so when we have new board members. It's a great opportunity to refresh ourselves and to also share possibly new information with you. So we have invited our legal counsel, Craig Price, who is very knowledgeable in both the Brown Act requirements as well as the Public Records Act, and he will be providing a summary and synopsis and kind of a training for us. Craig.
Okay. And for everybody, it's in your folder. It's a white sheet that says Brown Act Summary on the top. I think it'd be helpful to look at that while Craig's telling us what's legal and what's not.
Thank you, President Bloom, board members, veterans, as well as new board members. I'm delighted to be here, and Dr. Gaskin. Dr. Gaskin, we talked about how we should do this, and recognizing that you have a lot on your plate, it was decided that we would save you the 3-hour special and that we'd sort of jam what we could into maybe a half hour, something like that. And I also, myself, I don't like monologues. I don't like listening to them, and I even less like giving them. So as we go along, at any point, please break in, ask questions, because that's what I'm here for, is to address questions that you have. And in particular, in talking about the Brown Act, I would think that you would be especially concerned about things that affect you as board members, as opposed to the history of the Act, things that are done in Angie's office in terms of some of the details of agenda preparation that are done very well, and so on. So that's what I'm going to try and cover. President Bloom referred to a handout that I sent along after the agendas went out, so those are available to the public for anybody that wants them. I would, in any other location, I'd refer to it as a cheat sheet, but I'm not sure that that's appropriate terminology in this venue, so you can call it what you want, but I'm not intending to go through this item by item, but I think it sort of provides a good framework to start off and talk about very briefly what's covered by the Brown Act and what's not covered. What are you required to do in terms of your activities, and what other types of activities fall outside? And then the public's right. The Brown Act isn't merely about the public's right to have you conduct your business in open. It starts out with the public's right to know what you are going to be doing. In other words, to know ahead, and that gets into the agenda requirements. Of course, the public has the right to participate, and you're all aware that there are provisions for public comments and rules and regulations. And the public has the right to see, which I think is an especially important topic for board members, because it has to do with, especially with out-of-meeting type communications. And then, of course, everybody knows that there's allowance for certain closed sessions to cover particular topics. So I want to cover that. One of the things that goes into agenda preparation is a requirement that there be an accurate description of what it is that's going to be discussed by the board, and agencies get in trouble all the time when someone comes along and says that the description is not accurate. Well, I suggested, even though the focus is on the Brown Act and not on the Public Records Act, because there's really not enough time, to include the Public Records Act also, due to the fact that some years ago, an agency that I still represent was sued in a Brown Act case claiming that because when I gave a Brown Act training, I made reference to the California Public Records Act, and the agenda didn't say that. So to be on the safe side, I thought I'd just put a few words in the agenda just to cover it. So where does one go to get information on the Brown Act? And you as board members, of course, don't have the obligation to look these things up and to do your own research. But you are undoubtedly going to encounter members of the public, your constituents, perhaps employees here at the college, who will be apprising you of what they understand that the Brown Act requires or doesn't require. And I would just encourage you to be cautious about that kind of input and to suggest to them that sometimes it requires a deeper look than what appears on the surface. For example, one of my Bibles, the Brown Act, that's getting very frayed, that I carry around, not quite everywhere, but almost, was last updated in 2003. A lot of people go to that online as the source for information, but what they don't know is that the law has changed. So if you look and see what the Attorney General says in this book, in certain instances, you could be wrong. So really, in order to examine what the Brown Act requires, we have a statute that's quite long and quite detailed. Of course, there have been any number of different court cases. The books are really full of them. And the cases that go on to the Court of Appeal or to the California Supreme Court and are published are precedents that we all and the courts look to interpret what various ambiguous provisions actually mean. And then beyond that, the California Attorney General regularly is asked questions and issues written opinions that cover, among other things, interpretation of the Brown Act. So we have to look at all of those sources, and we also have to look and make sure that whatever we find, for example, on the internet, is up to date, because there are a number of places where changes have made that many people would not know. So what is covered? The Brown Act, of course, covers your body. It also covers any board that is created as a result of action by you, with one exception. So if you create a committee that, even a committee that has a minority of board members, 2 or 3 board members, as well as other people, that's a Brown Act committee, and that means that they have to govern themselves accordingly in all respects, from agenda preparation to notice to public participation, you name it. The exception is where there is a committee, an ad hoc committee, meaning a committee that's appointed for a singular purpose, to go and study an issue, that is composed solely of board members, and that would be less than a quorum of board members. Then that group, even though it's created by the board, can go and meet. But that committee has to be solely composed of, which would be 3 or fewer board members. That's the only exception. So whenever there's board action to create a group, it's Brown Act governed. Except in the case of collective bargaining, sometimes there are committees formed where you would have a board committee that might meet to talk about benefits and so on. And there's actually an exception for that in the Employment Relations Act. But there's one key distinction to be made, and that is where a committee or a working group of some kind is created, not by the board, but, for example, by Dr. Gaskin as the college president, then under the explicit terms of the Brown Act, that is not something that is required to follow all of the rules and the notice and the agendas and so on. So that's an important exception to keep in mind. What is not covered in terms of your activities when you're with one another? You can go to social occasions, you can go to conferences, and you can attend other agency meetings. All of you, a minority of you, a majority of you, and that's all fine as long as you don't engage in conversation having to do with the district business among yourselves in terms of a group of 4 or more of you. So there shouldn't really be much concern about attending these various types of conferences or needing to stay away from one another and so on. Sometimes people get the impression when they see you at something, and maybe 4 of you are huddled around, oh, I bet they're up to monkey business. But I don't really think that that's a justification for having you have to maintain isolation from one another, because all boards basically know that the act is not intended to curtail their activities at conferences and social occasions and things like that. So what about the public's right to know ahead? You know that for a regular meeting, it's 72 hours notice. Oh, yes?
Would you like to be interrupted?
Absolutely.
Before you get to that topic, I was thinking maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on the social situation. When you say we cannot discuss board business, the board makes decisions. The board makes decisions about college business. On the other hand, if you're getting together socially, it would be quite natural to talk about some aspects of the college that aren't necessarily decisions. Isn't it great such and such happened, or something like that. So I was thinking you might perhaps give us a little bit more elaboration on that.
I'd be happy to try. It really requires some extrapolation, because there isn't anywhere where you can actually go and look this up. There really aren't reported cases or opinions, and the Brown Act doesn't explicitly cover it. But certainly, if you have, for example, a budget matter that's coming up and you are at a retirement party, then most obviously you're not going to have 4 or more of you huddle around and talk about any budgetary related issues. On the other hand, if you're talking about something funny that happened at the last board meeting that has nothing to do with anything that is being deliberated by the board or that is anticipated to be deliberated by the board, then I think that would just be an incidental communication, because to a certain point, you know, the commonality of your lives revolve around the college, and so it is natural that there be some communication. But I think mainly it's a logical thing. Anything that has to do with your function as a board member in terms of things that you deliberate should not be talked about. But that doesn't include things like dates. Would it be okay with you if our meeting was on such and such a date as opposed to another date? There's an exception for that. And again, it's really pretty much common sense. The public policy is that the public should have a right to see you in action when you are deliberating the business of the college. And for things that are incidental and really don't pertain to the business of the college, then it's okay.
Thank you.
Yes?
You brought up the fact that there are some not great, well, there are gray areas, and there are some places where when you go to the internet, all the information may not be accurate in one specific document or site you're researching. And I just wanted to let the public know that often through the Office of the President, there's dialogue between that office and legal counsel as to closed sessions and the Brown Act. You know, over the past 2 years, there's been discussion about whether that's been handled appropriately or not. And so again, just for members of the public, it's a regular course of business. The Office of the President does converse with you on these matters.
Yes, that is the case. When there are questions, then I'm frequently consulted. An example of that, I know it's something that's come up in the past at other agencies as well as here. There is confusion on the part of a lot of people about what has to be reported out of a closed session, because boards take actions in closed sessions, they reach decisions, and don't every one of those decisions need to be reported out? I mean, I'll give you just an example so that the veteran board members, don't feel bored here. You can jump in and answer if you want, but suppose the board deliberates in closed session and selects 3 finalists for a position, and you take a vote on that in closed session. Does that get reported out? Anybody want to venture a... You don't have to. I know you know, Trustee Croninger, you just don't want to show off, no? Well, it hasn't always been that clear cut, but there was a Court of Appeal case involving Gillespie versus the City and County of San Francisco. And the court said, no, that doesn't need to be reported out. Why? The answer is because although there was an action that was taken, as that's defined, there's another section of the Brown Act, which I won't bother quoting and showing off, but it comes up a lot, that defines what it is that needs to be reported out. And only those things that are specified need to be reported out. And the relevant thing in that section is an appointment. Well, there wasn't any appointment made. There were finalists that were selected. It was not an appointment. And so the Court of Appeals said, no, you don't report that out. And there are obviously some policy reasons to support that, because when you have candidates, you don't want their names floating out. Maybe they haven't told their bosses and so on and so forth. And in fact, in a more recent Attorney General opinion in 2006, it was made very clear that only certain types of actions have to be reported out, not others. And in each case, it's because the legislature so prescribed, and supposedly because there are good policy reasons in the delineation that they decided upon in adopting the law. So just getting back briefly to my item number 4, having to do with the public's right to know ahead. I get questions a lot about special meetings, not here, but from people in other agencies. Oh, well, what can we do at a special meeting? You can call a special meeting to conduct almost any business that you can conduct at a regular meeting. There are very few exceptions, and in fact, I think there may be some things in the Education Code that require a action be taken at a regular meeting, but the only Brown Act provision that constitutes a restriction pertains to executive compensation. And that's a new law that just went into effect, and it's part of a package of new laws that is an outgrowth of the City of Bell controversy where various reforms were put in. So executive compensation matters need to be brought to the board at a regular and not a special meeting. Does anybody know whether or not there's a requirement in the Brown Act with respect to the keeping of minutes, or what the law is in that regard? Because there's been some discussion here locally about that issue in the past. Well, there is no provision in the Brown Act, but there is a provision in the Education Code that relates to community colleges, and all it says is that there shall be minutes kept of every meeting and the actions of the board recorded. That's it. And so beyond that minimum requirement, it is up to each agency to decide how much farther they want to go beyond what the minimum requirement is. And most agencies do what is called notice minutes, where there's a very brief summary. And I've followed your minutes, and Angie does a tremendous job with a lot of very good description, stopping short of another extreme, which is to include so much detail that it almost invites a board to go back and to have to engage in discussion about what was actually said versus what was meant. So there's room for a happy medium, but I thought it might be helpful for you to know that that's entirely a matter of, within your discretion. Yes?
While you're on that point, one of the areas of great interest to me has always been transparency, and we have kind of levels of access to information about the board's discussion. We have the videos that we take of our regular meetings, and they're on television and available on YouTube, I guess it is. We have audios of our study sessions and of our subcommittee meetings, and those are posted and you can listen to them. And then we have the minutes, which are of course briefer, as you just described. Can you perhaps comment briefly, since you've mentioned the Public Records Act as well, people's right to access this information, which really underlies a lot of what we're talking about, the public's right to see us discuss and decide in public the questions that are before us as a board?
Yes, thank you. It's a short answer. The public has the absolute right to obtain copies of or to view records of your meetings, to listen to the audio or to watch the video. The college is only obligated, let's see, I think the requirement is if they're recorded, that you only have to keep the record of the meetings for 30 days, which has been a practice of some agencies in the past. But more and more, almost everyone puts the record of their meetings, if they have it, up on the web, and they keep them up there. So that it's possible to go back, and even if it's taken down, to archive them somewhere. So generally speaking, the public has the right to go back. And I think having that information is not only useful and helpful to the public and perhaps to board members when you want to go back and really check something, but I think it puts less pressure on minute taking, because there's really less justification to have to spend a great deal of time, you know, transcribing. You can thank me later, Angie. Transcribing and trying to get things accurate, and then to have the board go over it and say, well, is this exactly what was said? When at any point in time, anybody can go and listen to it or watch it on YouTube. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, the public's right to participate. That's my number 5 on the document that I won't call a cheat sheet. You know, a couple things here. First of all, not that this would crimp your style, but the right of the public to give public comment on items that are not on the agenda only applies to regular meetings, not special meetings. You, of course, have regular study sessions. The Brown Act doesn't recognize a study session. A meeting is either a regular meeting or it's a special meeting. If you want to have a traditional study session and just focus on one particular topic or two, you have a retreat, for example. Typically, that would be at a meeting that is other than on your regular, listed on your regular yearly calendar, and that'd be set up as a special meeting. But if you publish ahead all of your monthly study sessions, and they're listed on the website, and you give 72 hours notice, just like everything else, probably that's going to be regarded as a regular meeting because it has all the trappings of a regular meeting. So just pointing that out. I'm wondering, in terms of meeting protocol, which certainly you're going to continue to be called upon to have to become involved in, particularly during controversial times. If any of you know how you would handle a situation if a member of the public were to rise to a point of order.
Well, the chair would recognize, the members of this board have a right to rise to a point of order, but I don't believe that a member of the public could.
Excellent. That's a good answer. I've had that happen with a board, and they became nonplussed because they, where does that come from? Actually, in your rules, as near as I can tell, it's not in your board policies, but you don't adopt Robert's rules. You might informally, so theoretically, there is no point of order from anyone. But of course, you're right. To the extent that ordinary parliamentary procedure is going to be followed, unlike traditional parliamentary procedure, which is for the whole community of participants, it's really just for your board. Supposing somebody wants to get up and, hopefully this would never happen, but to criticize any of you and accuse you of some kind of wrongdoing, would that be something that they would be allowed to do, prohibited to do?
Yes?
Yeah.
I would point out that as you go through your board policies, I think you're going to want to consider a revision to BP 2355 because it does not allow allegations to be made against an officer or an employee of the college. And I think that's a reflection of past times. That's nothing that has been adopted and probably not even adhered to during recent years. But there have been a couple of federal court cases that have said, no, you can't abridge somebody's constitutional rights. They can get up there and pretty much say anything as long as it does not cause a disruption in the meeting.
Well, that gives rise to the fundamental question. At what point is that line crossed where it is no longer just simple criticism of me, who is certainly subject to criticism, but it is also disruptive of the general meeting agenda?
I think the simple answer to that is that it is not to be based on the semantics that are used, the name calling, even cursing. I've read in some cases where some very foul things have been said, but rather the focus is where the conduct of the meeting, meaning your ability to move along without disruption, is impacted. So that there's a lot of noise that's being made, somebody refuses to stop talking when their time is exhausted and they keep on going. And so it's those kinds of things rather than the nature of the language that's used. I think when you do get those kinds of complaints or charges against employees of the college that come up, there's certainly nothing wrong with advising the member of the public that you have a procedure in place for handling those complaints, and that the complaint should be taken to the right place where it will be followed up on. And there's certainly nothing wrong with doing that. When it comes to public comments, I noticed that President Bloom referred to comments within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, and that was exactly right. I think you're also going to want to slightly modify BP 2345 because it says that the public comments are on matters directly related to the business of the college. That's a little narrower than within the general jurisdiction without dragging it out. So that's just a little something to highlight. I've had a number of questions in the past about when public comments come up. Sometimes people will be saying things over and over, or just even one person. And you might think, this is so wrong. I'd really like to respond to that, but somehow I feel that my hands are tied because I shouldn't be responding. Well, there's no rule that says you can't respond. I think the ordinary and undoubtedly the best practice is generally not to respond because it would just open it up and become ungovernable. But whenever any board member or Dr. Gaskin for that matter, feels that it would be helpful for any reason to briefly respond and perhaps correct something so that the people that are in the audience or watching on television are not misinformed in terms of the state of affairs on some particular issue, then that's perfectly appropriate. The public's right to see. This is a big one for boards. I think you all know, I know the returning trustees, I was going to say veteran again, but I won't say that. The returning trustees know that you can't have a concurrence of a majority of the board outside of a meeting which has the various items being discussed on the agenda. And that means quite naturally and logically that you can't accomplish the same thing through a series of intermediaries where board member number 1 calls board member number 2, and then pretty soon no. I mean, that's obvious, but it wasn't always obvious, and it took court cases and amended legislation in order to get there. But one of the issues that I think is important that some people misapprehend has to do with providing information to board members. I've had many questions in other agencies. Is it all right if I receive information outside of a board meeting? Well, sure it is. You can get one-way information. Is it all right if a college official comes around and briefs me on some aspect of the college that is going to be coming before the board? And assume, hypothetically, that that same college official is going to go and brief each one of you. Is that all right? Well, according to a court of appeal in 2006, no, it wasn't all right because it infringed on deliberation and on and on. But in 2008, the legislature said, no, you can't hamstring boards because things are so complicated, they have to have a means of having information provided. And so the Brown Act was amended to specifically authorize the conveyance of information regarding board business as long as the person went around and talked to different board members, they didn't receive and pass on the position of the board member that they were talking to, because that would be a serial type of a communication. So it's perfectly fine for you to go to staff or for staff to come to you and provide you with information on matters that either you feel or they feel is important for you to have, as long as the fundamental rule is adhered to, that information with respect to how different board members may be reacting or what they might say should not be passed along. Any questions on that one? Because I think it's really important. The only other topic on this one that I think merits brief attention is the subject of email. And that's really also where my little vignette into the Public Records Act comes in. One of you sends an email that says, you know, I'm really liking this proposal that I'm seeing on the agenda and I think it's a great thing. And one of you sends it to 2 other people. That's fine, that doesn't violate anything. But then, of course, we have the forward button that we've become very accustomed to using. And when somebody hits that forward button and says, well, I want to share it with this other person, then all of a sudden we're crossing a line and you're getting 4 people that are involved or more people. So it's really important that board member electronic communications be controlled because we've become so accustomed to this being the way we do things rather than picking up the phone and talking to one person if you want to have a communication. Many times I've seen board members on this board and as well as others, when there are these kind of communications, put something, do not reply or forward, or do not reply to all or forward. And I think that's very important, because the Brown Act doesn't carry with it a requirement that there be an intention to commit a violation. It's if you do it, you do it. And if you are part of a chain that facilitates a violation, then although the sheriff isn't going to come and take you away, you're still part of an action that can result in either a lawsuit or some action by the district attorney to block the board or get an injunction or that kind of thing. So you don't want to be part of a group that is even inadvertently putting itself in the position where it can facilitate a Brown Act violation. And some people don't know that under the Public Record Act, pursuant to which folks are entitled to get a great many documents from local governmental agencies, that includes email communications of board members with respect to matters pertaining to the business that's before the college. So, you know, you've all heard it before, but when you put something in an email, don't put it down unless it's something that you don't care if the whole world sees. You know, I think all of us have written a lot of letters or a lot of emails and then we don't send them, but it sure felt good to write it. Well, I think that's a lesson. And then the last part is that even where you are using your personal email, because a lot of people, of course, you have SBCC accounts, but even if you're using your personal email, that's subject to disclosure too, because otherwise nobody would ever use the college email. They just circumvent it that way. There are actually no cases on that though, so I can't tell you that that's already been decided, but it's pretty clear that that would be the outcome if push came to shove. So I'm sure I've exhausted and then some my time, but those are really the highlights that I wanted to cover with you today. I don't know if you have any other questions.
No, it's very helpful. Anybody?
Just
Peter?
a quick comment. Ralph Brown came to his conclusion exactly 60 years ago. It was 1953. And I think it's important to know that prior to that, which is really the source of his efforts at the State Assembly to impose these constraints on us, prior to that, decisions were made. I mean, the term in political science is back rooms with blue smoke and mirrors. The whole point, and I guess this is the logic that we need to remember, is that we are spending the public's money, and therefore the public has a right to know, and that blue smoke and mirrors no longer prevails thanks to Ralph Brown. Won't say the same about all the amendments that have been made to his law, but he had a valid point.
But one of the most astounding things to me is that Ralph Brown, as part of the legislature, didn't have it apply to the legislature. So the Assembly and Senate, they just do what they want to, and, you know.
To which we can say, nobody's perfect.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you have questions, I'm sure at any time when they come up, we can ask Lori, and then, you know, she can ask Craig or whatever you would like to do on that one. Reorganization. Our
Thank you.
president here.
This is a follow-up to a presentation I made about a month ago, sharing with you the direction that we are headed in two key areas of the college relative to reorganization. At that time, and this is the beauty of participatory governance, in the two areas, human resources and in administrative services, we brought it through our shared governance process, which the nexus of which is our College Planning Council. And CPC, for short, had some great thoughts and great feedback for us, which both Vice President of our Business Services, Joe Sullivan, and I took back and kind of reflected on it. And as a consequence, one of the key elements is to integrate the emergency response and readiness initiative and focus that we so much need here into Joe's area of responsibility rather than to have it as a standalone position. So that's the only difference that you are seeing from what we had presented to you earlier. And during that earlier presentation in November, we did reflect upon the fact that we had been receiving input from the institution and were ruminating about how best to incorporate that. So again, another example and an opportunity to commend College Planning Council for taking on the responsibility that they own, and that is to really take a very heartfelt look at these sorts of things and to provide guidance and feedback before it gets to me and the board.
Okay, other questions, Marcia?
I was just going to say, I'd like to commend Dr. Gaskin and Joe Sullivan for, and all of our administrators for really listening in this process to the comments of College Planning Council and others on this question. At the same time, as I read the job description of the Director of Administrative Services and Emergency Response, I had the feeling this person is going to be walking on water. So I wish them good luck, and I hope we will give them the support and help that they need to do what is clearly a very complex job, a lot of responsibility.
And we greatly appreciate you recognizing this. This is, I'm not going to call it an experiment. And it's not, it may not be the thing we actually end up with in the end, but we're very willing to give it a go and to provide the resources, the training, the support, and the commitment that Joe and I have to make it work. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we're on to item 2.4 because we've done 2.1 through 3. 2.4 is our annual organizational meeting. For 2013, I'm sorry, for a year from now. I was going to say we're doing it right now, but it's for next year. And we're looking at, why am I having a problem? Here it is, December 12th at 4 o'clock. Any changes to that? Okay, that works. And the next one is the meeting dates, which is at 2.5. And it's, I think this should change, but it will change for next year maybe. And that is, these are all the board meetings, but they're not, it's just the board meetings that are in here. Our study session also should be on here. So I don't know,
These are the regular board meetings that we establish. Your study sessions are called, I believe, study sessions / special meetings.
Yeah, but I really feel like, and maybe I'm the only one up here, we have study sessions 2 weeks before each of these board meetings, and they seem to be on a regular basis. And I know they seem like, I don't think they're special meetings. I mean, maybe they're special because they're so nice or something, but I don't.
We can certainly bring that back next time.
I think we should talk about it. But for next year, here are all the meeting dates, so those should go on everybody's calendars. Okay? Okay, and next is 2.6, which is establishment of the standing committees. And we kind of went over this at the study session. We have, and let me just read them, and we'll see what people think. On facilities, we have Lisa Macker and Marianne Kugler and Craig Nielsen. Is that fine? Okay. On fiscal, it's Marcia Croninger, Craig, and Lisa. And on ed policies, Marianne, Peter, and Veronica. Okay? Any changes to that? No.
I believe we need to take action on 2.4.
Oh. We have
These
to
are all-
accept the meeting dates, of course we do.
I'm
Thank
sorry?
you.
As in vote?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
On
for
each of
action,
these. On
right.
each of- Yes.
And I want to say, I really appreciate the sheet that tells us,
Good.
you know, that covers it, and I just then glommed onto it, just went by it. So for action, let's go back to 2.5, and that's for the dates of this board meetings.
2.4.
Oh, 2.4 is
Let's start with
starting now.
2.4.
Okay, 2.4, the annual meeting. Okay, which is December 12th, 2013. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And 2.5, the board meetings.
Move approval?
Okay, is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we have the standing committees, and this is for action two. I read off each of them. There's a fourth committee that's listed here that we started last year, Community Relations. Lisa, did you, because you were the head of Community Relations.
think-
weren't you?
We
We
to
decided
forego
at the study session to forego that.
Okay.
From now on with actually, as Craig mentioned too, with the idea that community relations should be integrated into all of our committees and all of our meetings and all of our actions, so.
Okay, is there any objection to that? We'll just let that one go. Okay.
We didn't appoint alternates to those committees.
Okay. And I would like to serve as alternate to each of the committees, so. if
You are
anything-
automatically,
I know, but I'd like that to be put down on there, though.
but that's automatic. In addition, though,
Okay,
unless you want to attend any time that there's an absence on a committee. But it has been our custom to appoint an alternate, a different alternate to each of these
I
committees.
had forgotten that, you're right.
So that if there is an absence, somebody can be called and pulled in.
Okay, so let's go through each of them, you're right. Education policies, it's Mary Ann, Peter, and Veronica. And who could be an alternate there if somebody has to miss a meeting? Anybody? Marcia? Okay. Okay, and fiscal, it's Marcia, Craig, and Lisa. Anybody would like to be an alternate there if something's missing? Someone's missing? Mary Ann? Okay. Okay. And facilities, it's Lisa, Mary Ann, and Craig. Would somebody be an alternate there?
Would you like to do that?
Okay, okay, good, thanks, Veronica. Okay, did you get all those, Angie? Okay, better than I did, I'm sure. Okay, now on to 2.7.
Shall we move to
Oh,
approve?
let's move to approve that. Okay,
So
move to approve the committees.
I would move to approve the committees and the alternates.
Mhm. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Then
any discussion about that? Yes, Marcia?
I just wanted to say one thing. For those who are watching on TV and do not necessarily see our audio only of the study session, we had some discussion about all of this, about the subcommittees, what direction we wanted to go. We also had the opportunity for people to indicate if they were interested in being president next year, which Marty did, and vice president, which Lisa did. So if you're just looking at this video, it may seem a little odd if you didn't know about the previous discussion.
Right. Right. Okay, okay. Did we vote on that? I don't think we did. Okay, this is for the committees. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And now 2.7. This is the County Committee on School District Organization at its annual organizational meeting. I think this was the one I was serving on last year. And there was only one meeting of it. And the idea is to appoint members of the county committee, and one member from each of the school districts is on that to appoint a district, the committee. So that's all it is. And, you know, but I think it's good to have it, it's kind of a check and balance on that committee to make sure that things are going well.
I would volunteer.
You can do it too by mail, you don't have to go in. I went in
Oh, good.
last time thinking that's what you're supposed to do, and I was the only
I
one
like the
there.
idea of a committee that only has one meeting a year.
Just about, unless something big comes up, but then that is taken care of by the county committee that you appointed, so, you know, anyway. Okay, so we have Peter, and then we will need an alternate to Peter for that one meeting. Seems almost foolish in some way, but we're supposed to do that. Anybody volunteer, Mary Ann? Okay, thank you. Okay, this is for action, so is there a motion to that effect, that Peter is our representative and Mary Ann the alternate?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Okay, there's a motion and second, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Okay, appointment, this is 2.8, which is appointment of a member to the Citizens Oversight Committee, which is Measure V, and that has been an important committee. I mean, they're all important, but this is really, a focused committee on how we spend the dollars.
And if I
All
could
right.
comment, this is
Sure.
your last appointment. As you may recall, you have appointed individuals to replace those members whose terms have expired, and we had a difficult time finding a representative for the Senior Citizens Organization. And we have, and Michael Just's name is being presented to you, as well as application for your consideration.
Okay. Okay, any discussion about this? This is to join that committee, the Measure V Oversight Committee.
Were you able
Yes.
to meet with Michael?
No.
Does that matter?
We reviewed his application and are bringing it to you with a recommendation.
Okay.
I like the fact that he said he has a master's degree in counseling, and he likes to think he's a good listener. And I think that alone is amazing, so.
I move approval
Okay, of Michael Just,
of Michael Jess for Senior Citizen Organization Representative.
okay, to the Oversight Committee. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, good. That's a lot of business we got done, a lot of little things today, but each one of them is important in their own right, so thank you. The next one, oh, I got the wrong page here, sorry.
2.9.
Yeah, 2.9, which is revision to Chapter 1 of our Board Policy Administrative Positions. Yes, Lori.
This is actually a very monumental step that you are engaging in tonight. And this is first reading of your revisions and updating to your board policies. And we're starting with Chapter 1. It is a relatively short chapter. There are 7 chapters in totality with your board policies, and we are reviewing every single word of every single board policy and supporting administrative procedure. We're not necessarily going in order for a variety of reasons. I believe next you'll be seeing Chapter 6 come to you. But you may recall that one of your board goals is to update your board policies and administrative procedures because they have been outdated and somewhat in need of attention. Recognizing that this is a job that is beyond the bandwidth and scope of any employee here at the institution, we contracted with the Community College League of California and are working with a very skilled consultant who has done this work at about 12 other districts statewide or maybe more. She has been holding our hand through this process and engaging in a very collaborative participatory governance process to update and examine every board policy. So you do have a work group that looks at this set of board policies before they come to the full board and after they've been reviewed by our internal committee structure, and that's our Board Policies and Administrative Procedures Committee. Your work group is Marcia Croninger and Marty Bloom. And we have been working diligently getting through these board policies. So we start with the easiest one. Board Policy 1100 is new to the institution. And this stems from the fact that there have been omissions in some areas of our board policy manual where we simply have not had a board policy, and we should. And this identifies the district, what the district's name is and where we're located and things of that sort. So that's identified. If you're looking at it in color on your iPad, it's identified in certain colors, underlined when there's new language and so on. And that's identified in the note at the bottom. Board policy, in addition, we provide the legal citation for you. This is going to get very, very large, the documentation, as we get into some of the real meaty chapters, but we wanted to start with something a bit more digestible. Board Policy 1200 is our mission statement. We ask that you adopt it knowing that we are in the process of likely revising it. And we will simply come back and revise this board policy once we get through the mission statement project. So this is first reading, and it has had many eyes. I took the lead in chapters 1 and 2. That was the first blush, sitting with the consultant. Then your work group, Then BPAP, the Board Policy Administrative Procedures Committee, BPAP. And now it's coming to you for first reading. It'll come back to you in January for second reading. So we believe that we're providing to you is really a quite tight, clean documentation. And hopefully that you will also look to your work group as that body that has really scrutinized the board policies and administrative procedures.
Yeah. So at the second reading, is that when action would be
Correct.
taken? So each one of those will be separately, each chapter will be
Yes.
separately,
We would ask that you take
Okay.
it chapter by chapter.
yes.
This will be a year, throughout the entire spring semester. I do believe that we're trying to complete it by June, the end of June. Is that right? Might be a tad later than that, and I'm seeing Dr. Nevins smiling as
Right.
well. So.
Right. Well, it's a big
It
undertaking.
is a huge undertaking. This
Right.
institution and all of you need to be commended for doing this, and boy, that people's hearts are in the right place with this. So.
Yeah, every word has to be accurate with respect to the law, too. So we're talking about Title V, we're talking about
Government code.
Yes, and Ed code, so it's, and all of it. It's just amazing. But it's, I think it's very worthwhile, as well as the new mission statement. That'll be interesting to see how that comes out, so, okay.
So we'll
this is
certainly
first
entertain
reading?
any questions you have on this,
Okay.
but it is first reading.
Any questions for this time? No? Okay.
I would just make a suggestion in our note at the bottom that we shorten it up and just say the information in the green language was added during review, because there are actually a couple of reviews and a couple of changes.
Oh,
And then there is not a board subcommittee here, there is a task force.
Right.
So,
If it was a board subcommittee.
Right, okay. Okay, anything else on this? Looks good. So far, so good on that one. Okay, Superintendent President report, you've probably done that? Been there, done that?
Yes.
Okay. Human Resources, Pat English, interim. Pat's been sitting in on our Board Policy Revision Committee also, which is very wonderful.
Good evening, President Bloom
Thank you.
and members of the board, President Gaskin. Welcome to the new board members. My name is Pat English. I'm the interim Vice President for Human Resources. And tonight I have to present to you 5 separate consent agenda items, but I do need to call your attention to one item which is located on 4.1C. It's the Human Resources Actions Involving Experts and Volunteers. There's one item that I do need to remove from that before I ask you to approve these in a block.
Okay. 4.1C, give us a second to get to that. Looks like there's 6 pages on that.
4.1C, it's under the experts in the non-credit area.
Which is on page,
I have page 2 of 2.
oh,
4.1C has 6 pages.
6 pages.
keep going.
Okay,
The subject on the item that I'm calling your attention to is Human Resources Actions Involving Experts /
oh,
Volunteers.
I see
What it
what's
looks
happening.
like,
Okay,
it'll look
Yeah,
like this.
Yeah.
Got it.
thank you. Yep,
The item that I need to pull, the name is Kiko Tanabe.
page 2 of 2, you're right.
Thank you.
So we're taking that off.
Take that off,
Okay.
please. So I am asking for your approval of actions involving everything from 4.1A through 4.1E. And for those who don't have the benefit of an agenda, those are actions involving permanent personnel, adjunct faculty, experts and volunteers, stipends for faculty, and temporary short-term and student personnel.
Okay. We can do that with one motion, I believe.
I
Okay?
believe so.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept this?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Okay, and discussion? Yeah, Marcia?
The only thing I was going to comment on is that, as with many of our agendas, we have retirements, and we are sorry to lose these people. And in this case, we are losing Leslie Griffin, who has been with us and just a wonderful member of our business services folks for a very long time. So Leslie will be hard to replace, but we're optimistic that we will find someone. And want to thank her.
Thanks for pointing that out. I noticed that, but thank you. We will all miss her. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're on to 4.2.
4.2 consists of human resources action items. I have 5 items that I will submit individually so that you can vote on them. The first item is the 2010-2012 successful conclusion of the reopener negotiations with the Instructors Association.
I move approval.
Okay, is there a second? Mary Ann? Okay. Okay, any discussion on that? This, I think we should vote on separately, do you think? I think
Angie,
so.
what-
Okay, so we can do all of them together? I feel like this.
So you're just doing A?
Yeah,
just doing
okay. Okay.
Just
That's
the
question.
IA
Okay,
agreement.
right. Okay, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, CSEA agreement.
The second item represents the successful conclusion of the contract negotiations that Liz Auchincloss mentioned earlier. This represents the CSEA agreement between the district and the bargaining unit between 2012 and 2015.
Right. Okay, can I have a motion? So moved to approve this. Okay, is there a second? Marcia? Okay. Any discussion on this? I know it was worked on very well by a bunch of people, so thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. C.
The next 3 items,
Yeah, could we
Yeah.
take all 3 for one motion?
Yeah, this one we can because it's not a resolution. Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. It would be fine with me if
I'm
it's
seeing
acceptable to
nodding.
the board.
I'm seeing nodding, so.
The next 3 items are the same, and what I was going to say is it represents an increase in the health and welfare contribution to our different employee groups. So there are 3 separate documents here with memos of understanding between the district and the Teamsters Union, which is our supervisory group, our management employees, which is a meet and confer group, and then our confidential employees.
Okay.
The reason I suggested that we have one motion is that it's the same
Yeah.
compensation in each
Right.
case. There's no differential.
Correct.
Okay. When, I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Okay. All 3 of those? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on this?
I just had a question. It says
Okay.
as soon as it becomes practicable. So when that is, whenever it makes sense to roll it out, or
We have already begun that increased payment, and what is a retroactive piece is because it's back to the beginning of October and we're here in December, we need to pay that probably in January. So that's the piece as soon as it's practical.
so January looks good.
Okay. Any other discussion, any other questions? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Freelander, educational programs.
President Bloom?
Yes.
If I could make a comment.
Sure.
The board just acted on something that's pretty significant. The institution is made up of our faculty, staff, and administrators who really are the heart and soul, along with our students, and that you concluded collective bargaining and meet and confer interactions and engagement with all of your employee groups really speaks volumes to the employee groups as well as to our district negotiators. And I would like to recognize Joe Sullivan, Pat English, and Jack Friedlander, because without all of them, it would probably not be as positive and fruitful. So everybody made it work, and I thank you all, and certainly with our employee group. So it's really a cause for celebration.
Thank you, thank you.
Good.
Dr.
So
Freeland?
that's great to be introduced in front of a statement like it's cause for celebration. But
Did I put that with Jack's name?
well, you know, it's I just imagined, but it sounded good. Anyway, thanks, Lori. I appreciate it. The first of all, before I comment on remarks, I want to personally acknowledge the efforts of Dr. Hasland for superb leadership he provided during that a challenging time for the college, and we've emerged in excellent shape. But in my role last year as acting president, you know, I can't begin to tell you how many hours Peter and I spent together, and how much he spent outside of what would normally be called upon to just listen to people, talk to people, answer questions, provide a different perspective that people had on different issues. And it was just quiet work that was hour after hour, 7 days a week, day, night, morning, night, day, and evening. And it's one of these things where you can't really talk about it, but the success that we're having now at the college and that we're all enjoying, you know, Peter played a yeoman's role in that, as did each of the continuing board members. So I just want to start out by acknowledging Peter, but also, you know, Lisa, Marty, and Marcia for your, what I felt was heroic efforts in getting us through some challenging times. And we're just in great shape now. So thank you very much for all you did and contributed. And, you know, hopefully for us who've been here for a long time, just we won't forget that, you know, period of time and what you did to help us get to where we are now. And we're in great shape now. So thank you for that. I'll be reporting, like each of the vice presidents come up, I'll be reporting on actions taken in educational programs. And starting in January, we'll be including continuing education as part of that. So my first recommendation is the modification of the 2012-13 academic calendar. And that is having Monday, December 24th as a college holiday, and the college will be closed that day. So I'm recommending approval of that.
Okay. Is there any objection? Well, we better vote on it, though. I don't think that's a resolution, is it? No, it's just a vote. Okay, can I have a motion to approve that? Veronica, is there a second? Craig? It's a new day. Okay, any discussion? Yes,
Just a
go
comment.
ahead.
I've been around for a long time and seen people working on December 24th, and I'm really wondering, you know, why am I here? And so this approach is a logical approach. It makes every bit of sense, and I think I'm just shocked that we haven't done it earlier.
I am too, yeah. Well,
All I
good
can
for
say
us.
on that one is, I know it's supposed to be about the shortest day of the year, but actually, for those of us who were here those days, it was the longest day of the year because
Right.
it's so
Funny.
slow. So this is, I think, an excellent decision.
Sure, sure, okay. Did we take a vote?
No.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next one,
So
yes.
Item 5.2 is I'm recommending approval of the 2013-14 academic calendar. And the calendar is being recommended for next year is very similar to what we have this year. And it's gone through all the consultation bodies for review and input. And we align the calendar, also we take into account our local school districts. And so we, you know, take that into account. And this is what we feel will work for everybody.
Okay. Okay, is there
I had a
any
question.
questions? Yes, Lisa?
How did we end up on the Thanksgiving Wednesday?
Right now, we're keeping it as is. And the academic senate said that as the debate brought forth, there's so many complex issues, and that decision has to, you know, make that a not a meeting day has so many other ramifications that it needed a lot more consideration and thought.
That was part of that.
And so that's why we decided to leave it as is for this coming year.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes,
too.
Marcia?
Did December 24th wind up a holiday or not? in this
No,
calendar?
we, unfortunately, we have not caught up in terms of negotiating with our employee groups with regard to that. We have every intention of doing that We just need to get the academic calendar in place for financial aid reasons and for scheduling reasons, and then we'll loop back around with our
Okay.
employee groups. So
Okay.
you'll see that again as a revision.
Okay, good. Okay, is there a motion to accept this?
We had a motion already, didn't we?
Oh,
Veronica and...
I don't remember it.
Oh, no, that was the previous one.
So moved.
Angie says no. If Angie says
apologize.
no, yeah.
Move.
Okay, move to accept. Is there a second? Craig? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. And
Good,
then item
thank you.
5.3, recommending course modifications, and which includes removal of Course Plus hours to stay compliant with changes in Title V.
Okay.
Move approval?
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay. And is there any discussion or questions about this list? You know what you're doing here? Okay. Okay, good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, and for all that work you did last year, wow. This must be a breeze this year, just doing everything else.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it last year too.
It's different, though.
It was very different.
Yeah.
I'm happy Dr. Gaskins here, I'm happy to be back in my role, so
There you go.
we're all happy.
Good year. That's good. Continuing education, Dr. Ariano.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, and a warm welcome to the new trustees, Dr. Gaskin. I have item 6.1, which is approval of course modifications, new courses for fee-based offerings.
Okay. Is there a discussion? There's another long list of courses. Okay, is there a motion? Okay, Marianne moves. Is there a second? Yes? Marcia? Oh, she upped you. Okay. Any discussion about this list? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And 7.1? Oh, no, that's something else. We got it.
6.2?
6.2.
6.2 is approval of new courses. These are state-funded courses and new certificate programs.
Okay. Okay, another list, a long list, okay?
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And one more, 6.3.
6.3 is in relation to the conversion of non-credit, non-enhanced course offerings in spring of 2013. We have vetted this recommendation through the different consultation groups, the CE Consultation Council and CPC, and the recommendation is to approve the continuation of 60% of the converted courses for spring 2013.
Okay. Yes,
40%
Lisa.
or 60?
The total of
We will
60.
Total,
40. We did 40 in the fall, 20 in the winter.
So we'll continue with
Right.
40.
The remaining 40 will be state-supported?
Correct.
Okay.
yes.
Oh, okay.
With
You're looking the
full-
other way around. Yes,
Yeah.
that's fine. That works.
With full fee-based come launch of the Center for
Okay.
Lifelong Learning.
Yeah.
Move approval.
Which should be in the fall of next year, we hope. Yeah.
Second?
Okay.
I moved, who seconded?
Okay, are there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, item 7.1, looks like Joe's up. Joe Sullivan.
People are usually happy to see the last person of the night, right?
I'm happy.
I wanted to welcome all of you. President Bloom, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I wanted to congratulate Ophelia on her new job. It's been a pleasure working with her over the years. She's done a great job, and she certainly has been extremely professional, and the job she's done in the last year, I've admired the way she's handled herself and the way she's worked. Thank you. Our first item is the business consent items, and the consent items generally don't have discussion, but tonight I'm going to be introducing to you Alan Eschenbach, and he'll be discussing for you item 7.1K, the audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2012. And
So can we pull item K from the consent calendar, vote on the others, and
if it's not necessary to pull it from, unless you want to pull it for a separate discussion. Alan's doing a presentation actually on the item. It's not promoting discussion, but if you'd like to pull it, we can.
Well, why don't we go ahead and look at all the others and vote on them?
Yeah,
Because I
I
think
would like
K is
to
the only
have a separate
one.
discussion on that one.
So
Okay.
let's look at items A through J.
I had a couple questions on one of that group, so. But
Okay.
do you want to make a motion, have a motion first?
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve items A through J
So moved.
on the consent calendar? Okay. Second? Mary Ann? Okay. Okay, you have a question about something, Marcia?
Yeah,
Which one?
G and H, basically. Is it going to be a lease-back?
Yes, this is the agreements to put in place with our consultant Lundgren, basically to develop that contract and to put it in place and to begin the design phase of it, which will allow us to go into the lease-back.
Okay, because I may have been reading too quickly, but when I was looking at H, the project management services, it seemed more like a low bid approach. And as I said, I may have been reading it too quickly at that
Yeah,
point.
this is Lundgren is the same group, and it's actually we're working with the same people who worked with us on the humanities building that arranged the lease back on that. And so they're working with us again on this project. And
Okay.
that's
So we're
really what
headed-
the agreement puts in place.
Okay, so we're headed in that same direction. And for those of you who are new to the process here, the drama music building was on a low bid basis, and we had a great many change orders, and it wound up costing basically twice as much as originally estimated. We're now doing leasebacks, and it's looking for humanities and for this project, I guess, and it is looking like we are going to have greater control over those costs, but we don't make promises yet.
No,
Am I right, Joe?
It's a different process. It's basically what you do is you go with a guaranteed maximum price is negotiated in the lease back, and so you're looking much more thoroughly up front at the project, getting more in-depth analysis of it by the contractor, because they do sign up, and it does limit the way that they can, or the way they come back and can look at essentially change orders and the differences. So it's good. I think it's also what makes it viable really is the selection of the consultant that operates it for us. Lundgren's doing a very good job on this project, and the architects have to be good as well. It becomes much more of a team effort rather than a three-way adversarial effort, and I think that's important.
Yeah, this is something
working well right now.
This is something we spent some considerable time talking about last year, and I'm certainly pleased with how it's going so far, as opposed to earlier experience. My second question is, do we know what this building is going to look like?
No, basically, when we selected the architect, they went through the process of asking for basically an initial proposal just based on some very basic requirements. And so now, then working with the user group, then a little more depth, we'll get into the actual, initial design phase. What was presented was really just the architects. This is, a quick take on what we would do and why we would do it, given what they had. Now they'll get a much more in-depth proposal, or they'll work much more closer with the user group and come up with a much more complete, the final design.
Okay. Well, I bring it up only I certainly don't want to incur additional expenses that would be unnecessary, but safe to say we have a diversity of architecture on this campus, and it would be nice to put some thought into trying to have a more cohesive approach, if that's possible, within the constraints that we face.
One of the areas I have asked the design group to look at is incorporating sustainability practices. I think that we need to be in the lead. We certainly teach it, and we need to practice that. So that is an area. Of all of our buildings, this is more of a generic building in terms of what it will house than specialized. So within that framework, we have the ability then to take a look at the outside architecture, the exterior, and get a more integrated approach to our footprint.
Okay. Let's vote on that. We have a motion and a second, so let's vote on items 7A through J. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we go to K, which is the audit report.
7-1K, and I'd like to introduce Alan, who will provide a presentation.
Wonder who was walking in here with a big box of stuff. Must be an auditor.
Good evening.
Welcome. Well,
Touching base briefly with Joe on order presentation here. Just wanted to spend a few minutes, now that we've completed the audit process, giving you basically the high-level overview of the work that was performed and the conclusions, the outcome. Talk about some of our recommendations, because typically that's where the interest lies, and focusing on the conversation. The purpose of the audit, of course, is to provide an independent review of the financial statements and some assurance that the financial statements, the numerical portion of the statements, if you will, are recorded in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We perform a variety of tests, substantive tests of information. We don't test every dollar. We use certain things, coverage of large dollar items, such as capital expenditures. We do samples of routine processes, such as payroll. We look at a lot of areas of internal controls, cash receipts, payroll, cash disbursements. We look at the bid process that you go through. And then we issue our audit opinion. On the financial statements, taken as a whole, the opinion can be found on page 5 and 6, but it's a clean opinion, an unqualified opinion. Basically, and then the management discussion and analysis that is a required element of the financial statements is included in pages 7 to 13, and that's the financial statements as a whole are of course historical in nature with some required look-forward information, and then the MD&A provides context to the basic financial statements. There's quite a bit of, in addition to the testing of the numbers, if you will, which is kind of what I just kind of very quickly glossed over, but again, a clean opinion over the financials does relate to the recording of transactions in the district. But there's quite a bit of compliance test work that we are asked to perform by the state and by the federal governments in an effort to reduce the number of people who come in to audit the district over the course of time. The state compliance list is found on pages 57 to 60. It's a fairly comprehensive set of areas that the Chancellor's Office asks us to perform test work over: attendance and a variety of other areas that they're funding or they have concerns about. The conclusion is that the district complied in all material respects with the requirements, but we did have a number of findings, which I'm going to get to in a few minutes. Findings and recommendations, and as a result of that, our opinion over the state compliance area was qualified. The federal compliance test work is, I'll talk about that in a minute, but we have a schedule of federal awards that identifies each source of funding from the federal government on pages 41 and 42. And you received about $34 million this past year. And just to provide some context, about 2 years ago, that number was about $24 million. Each year, we come in and we select major programs, and there's a rotating nature every 3 years to make sure that we're testing as many programs as possible. This year, the student financial aid cluster, which is almost always one of them, just due to the size and magnitude. But then the others that rotate this past year: higher education, institutional aid, and IT professionals healthcare consortium were tested in detail, which means they were identified as major programs, and the federal government actually issues a specific compliance supplement, specific things we're supposed to test related to those programs. We issue 2 separate reports. The first one is on internal control over financial reporting, and that's found on page 53 and 54. And that covers our general federal compliance test work as well as our test work over the financial statements. And that concludes that the results of our tests as it relates to compliance disclose no instances of non-compliance. Again, very positive outcome. And then the second report is on the compliance with requirements to each major program and internal control over compliance. And that's on page 55 and 56. And similarly, the results of our test disclose no instances of non-compliance. So clean, unqualified opinions on both of those on the federal side. As it does relate to a specific designation, the district also did qualify as a low-risk auditee for purposes of federal single audit testing, which is definitely a positive outcome. The findings can be found on pages 63 to 68. There were 7 state compliance findings, and I'm going to discuss the finding, and then excuse me, I think after I'm done with discussing all of the findings and done with my presentation, Mr. Sullivan will cover the district response, kind of what the district is doing in response to the corrective action plan for these items, okay? And as basically I'll touch on each finding. If you have any questions about that, let me know, and otherwise I'll move on to the next finding. The first one, 12.1, it relates to CalWORKS expenditures. We identified one disbursement of about $3,500, which was made on behalf of a student who was not an eligible CalWORKS recipient student. It was reversed prior to fiscal year end, so there was no financial impact. Okay, and the second finding, 12.2, relates to be arranged hours. And this is a partial repeat from the prior year. And the requirement is to list TBA hours in the official general catalog or the addenda. We identified 10 courses that did not identify the required TBA hours. One of the issues, I think, with this comment from the prior year was the timing as it related to updating the catalog on a go-forward basis. I think the district's now in compliance and has a plan for going forward. Okay. 12.3, board approval of courses. And I guess a note I meant to make contextually as I got into this is the state about a year and a half ago expanded some of their compliance testing requirements, which has resulted, I think, in some of the findings we're covering now. And they identified some areas that they really wanted to target and focus on. And I think there's a number of districts that are getting similar findings that people are now tightening up some of the process in these areas. So, and you'll see, for example, this 12.3, board approval of courses. There's a requirement to obtain board approval of credit and non-credit courses, and the minutes of the board or related committee are considered Class 1 permanent record and should be retained indefinitely. We were unable to identify proof of approval for 2 courses, which was a repeat finding from the prior year. Now, but the practical issue is that the courses that we identified were had been approved in the 1980s or 1990s, and so efforts were made to do a search and could not locate the board minutes or the support for those items. I think subsequent to about 2000 or so, everything's been electronic and you've got everything archived, but there's been more of a practical challenge on obtaining some of that older information. But it's a required finding based on the state requirements and what they're asking us to identify.
Could I ask you to just clarify that point? I mean, I'm not sure exactly what happened.
The district approved certain courses back in the 1980s, 1990s, for example.
Got it.
And undoubtedly had minutes, something reflecting approval of those courses. It's supposed to be considered a permanent record that you should be able to access. So we select courses to confirm approval and then look for the support for that approval.
Okay.
And when we looked back for items in that category we could not locate at the time, the support.
So we're missing minutes or something.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe people had a lot of fun looking for them, as a matter of fact.
Bad.
12.4, scheduling of courses based on 5-minute increments. Individual class schedules must be based on 5-minute increments for starting and ending times. We identified 6 courses with start and end times not on 5-minute increments. The practical issue is that they're held on a high school campus location and scheduled according to the high school's bell schedule, which makes sense from a practical standpoint, but it is a compliance issue. We verified that the FTEs, and related apportionment were properly claimed. So there were no question costs. But it is a finding, and I know, well, again, I'll let Mr. Sullivan respond with the district responses. 12.5, attendance accounting for hybrid courses. Courses that are hybrid courses with both a lecture and an online distant learning component are to be classified under the alternative attendance accounting procedure. We identified 3 courses that use the actual hours of attendance procedure, and as a result, FTEs were overstated by just under 2 for that item. 12.6, incomplete attendance records. The district has certain requirements which include rules for retention of support documentation for course enrollment, attendance, and disenrollment information that would allow for an independent determination regarding the accuracy of tabulations submitted by the district for apportionment funding. We identified 1 actual hour of attendance for which support could not be provided and 2 hours of attendance for which only a portion of support could be provided. We also identified 2 hours of attendance courses for which a student's hours could not be independently verified, and 5 instances where supporting attendance records were not in agreement with district tabulations. Of those 5, 1 was due to an instructor input error, and the other 4 were manual input errors in the district's banner system. The combined impact of those issues was approximately 2.2 FTEs. And then finally, 12.7, optional instructional hours in actual hours of attendance. The district is required to tabulate contact hours under the actual hours of attendance procedure by calculating the sum of the individual attendance hour for each student at each course meeting as reported by the instructor. We identified 2 courses that use this method plus additional optional contact hours. As a result of this inclusion of the optional contact hours, FTEs were overstated by 1.13. Our recommendation is to revise course outlines and ensure instructors do not include these hours when tabulating the actual hours. And then finally, we do review your findings from the prior year, and we evaluate the status of those. 2 of the items I just discussed were also findings last year. I mentioned one of them. Just issues sometimes where it comes up at the end of the year and you're already into the new fiscal year, and it's virtually impossible to resolve that issue. You can partially implement and resolve it, that 3rd year effectively, which I expect to be the case.
Okay, are there questions? Anybody? We want to see the district response, but if there are any questions. Okay. Okay, Jill?
I have one
Yeah,
question
please.
before you walk away. My understanding is that, given this environment, we're to expect even more testing as the years move along. It's not just this one occurrence where all of a sudden regulations are requiring extended testing. So is that your understanding also? I mean,
These things.
is there anything else that can be looked at that hasn't been looked at in depth?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, you can always identify different areas to drill down more deeply, and these things seem to ebb and flow.
Are we on an ebb or a flow right now?
You're on an ebb. I mean, when there's issues in other districts that create some level of embarrassment in the chancellor's office, they're going to try to make sure that those similar items are not occurring pervasively through the system. And that's effectively what's gone on here is they had some concerns. They wanted to make sure that they raised the bar a little bit, and so they identified specific things that needed retested. And that's what we're doing now. there may not be new items asked for another 10 years, but something else might happen 3 years from now, and then they might ask us to identify something else. Now, certainly, from our standpoint as auditors, we use our judgment, and we do kind of, you know, we try not to do the same things each year. We do come out and we do focus on maybe this area this year, and this area this year, and this area this year, and we rotate through. That's our firm's philosophy. But different firms may tackle that differently. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and then extending beyond that, once the threshold is increased, which it was this year, I understand you had to do expanded testing. Is that something now that's permanent in those particular areas?
It is until they adjust the state compliance supplement. It's a big, really, it would probably bore you to tears, but it's an important element that the state issues for what we do, because it identifies all the areas that are required to be tested. And that document evolves over time, and sometimes they make changes to it. This past time, they added a bunch of things, but they also identified a handful of things, and they said, you know what, we're really not concerned about this anymore, or this, or this, or this. And so they did actually, at the same time as they were creating an increased focus on the attendance area, they pulled out some things that really just weren't very relevant anymore.
Perhaps approval of board courses from the 1980s that are in basements?
That would be nice. Yeah, and that's been a challenge across the board, there's no question.
Yes,
If I could comment, and yes, you're so right, because after our sister college in Southern California had some issues with concurrent enrollment of special admit students, that was looked at very closely. We also had a college that had some issues with instructional service agreements, so that was independently audited. We're all holding our breaths with a college in Southern California who was just fined $5.28 million for discrepancies in the claiming of hours relative to catalog hours and actually scheduled hours. So there's certainly all eyes and attention on the structure of our courses, the nature of our curriculum, how it's coded, and how it's offered, and how then we claim FTES.
Interesting.
I thought it'd be easier. Al went through all of them, and then I just came back and talked about the district response. And also I mean, this is something, of course, we do take very seriously here, and we have put together an action plan, and we have submitted that action plan to the Chancellor's office for their approval. And, you know, I've got an initial response back from them, but it will go through their processes, and then they'll give us a more complete response. If you want to follow through in here, I'll cover them again, but 12.1 was CalWORKs expenditures, and that occurred in the fall of 2011 semester, and the district was completing a reorganization of CalWORKs into the Extended Opportunity Programs and Services administrative structure. And during this transitional time, maintenance of student records and documentation of eligibility were evaluated, and as a result of the evaluation, a caseload management document system was set up. This new caseload management system will ensure that student eligibility is properly identified and verified. And the system has been implemented, and there have been no additional incidences since the fall of 2011. For the to be arranged hours, item 12.2, the scheduling office does understand the need to publish TBA hours in the annual college catalog. This was a timing issue when we first, this is one of the repeat issues. When we first, it was, how do you say, when the auditors first brought it to our attention, we went back and reviewed and looked at it. Fortunately, in the interim, we had published our catalog for the 12-13 school year, or 11-12 school year. So it was just a timing issue. So we've gone back. This issue will not occur again. TBA hours have been included in the 12-13 catalog and will be included in all subsequent catalogs and addenda and in the official schedule of classes or addenda thereto, in accordance with official policy. So, in essence, we have corrected it, but it's on a go-forward basis, not for the prior years that this finding is for. Item 12.3 is the board approval of courses. This is an interesting one because it is going back into boxes and trying to find hard copies. And we have gone through the process of substantiating that they were approved because we have board minutes that we can produce the board minutes that substantiated they were approved. What we can't produce is the original documentation, that hard copy. So we are currently conducting a thorough review of all course approval documents, and any courses with missing board approvals will be reapproved by June 30th, 2013 in order to achieve 100% compliance with this regulation. And we've already gone through all of our records and produced the list of ones that we have to go back through and get reapproved.
Joe, are you talking about the course outline that's submitted to the curriculum committee, approved and then filed?
The original course outline.
And that's what you can't find?
Yes, that's what we can't find.
For 2 courses, right?
Okay.
Dr. Gaskin, at the fiscal committee, you talked about a rotating review every 6 years. Maybe if you shared that with the other board members, that would help on this item.
What typically happens, and what's confounding this, is that we are required to ensure that our curriculum is up to date and reviewed at a minimum every 6 years. So when you review your official course outline of record, you have a tracking either at the top or the bottom that says originally approved by the Board of Trustees 4/10/1990, modified 6 years later. So you get a tracking system. You can go back to those board agenda items and pull that agenda to substantiate the approval of the modification, the revisions, as well as the original documentation. So that's what we need to put in place, and we can do that, but we simply can't get our hands on these.
Okay, the item 12.4 is the scheduling of courses based on 5-minute increments. And this is the one where we offer the courses on the high school campus. A course held on a high school campus must conform to the bell schedule of that campus, and bell schedules do not always observe the 5-minute increment. The district does confirm that the length of class time is in compliance for the proper calculation of contact hours for attendance reporting. So it is simply the issue of do they start at 12:05, 12:10, 12:15, and we are in the process of working with the high schools to see what can be done. 12.5 is the attendance accounting method for hybrid courses. Our response basically is that these courses were overlooked when the district undertook a major review of the attendance accounting methodology of all courses. An exception report from the student information system was produced in order to monitor the attendance accounting methodology, and this report will be used to confirm that the proper attendance method is in use for hybrid courses. There was during the audit, we were very proactive in looking at, and this is, I have to thank Robert and Allison and everyone in the college. Really, when we get this, we take it, as you can imagine, and we go immediately out and say, what is the problem? What's the extent of the problem? And they worked very closely with us on this, and they developed an exception report. And we're going to continue to employ this report in all future terms, and so we do not expect this issue to reoccur. Incomplete attendance records. This is our district response to this was that the district will develop a standardized process and format for recording positive attendance for spring semester 2013. A new procedure for submission and retention of attendance records will help ensure that the district is in compliance with regulations and policy. In addition, the error in calculating contact hours was the result of a clerical error. A manual calculation was necessary due to a change in the start and time of the class from a previous semester. If the automatic calculation feature of our Banner student information system had been used, the hours would have been calculated correctly. To prevent this from happening in the future, an automated report will be implemented that will cross-check any manual override calculations. So we are, and our action plan is to develop a standardized process and format for recording positive attendance by spring semester 2013 and rigorously enforce their use. And so we're working on that.
Okay.
Item 12.7, the inclusion of optional instructional hours in actual hours of attendance procedure. The district response to that was that the optional instruction hours were removed from the district student information system, but unfortunately some courses were overlooked. An exception report was used to confirm that all operational instruction hours have been excluded from future attendance accounting calculations, again on a go-forward basis, but that's what we've done. Revisions to the course outlines of record will be submitted to the district's curriculum advisory committee for implementation. And again, our action plan was we had attempted to eliminate the optional instructional hours from the system in the previous year, and we have corrected. We've gone back and looked with an exception report to find those courses that we missed. And again, we don't believe that this problem will reoccur going forward. Okay?
Okay. We obviously take this very seriously.
We do.
And yes, it's good, and I'm actually glad that they point things out. Otherwise, it might just go on without. So we thank you, and
well, there are 2 supplemental reports with the audit: the Measure
Okay.
B audit and
Okay.
the parking audit.
right.
And Alan will cover those briefly, just in case you have any questions.
Okay.
Before I do, I want to agree, though, with a comment that was made. The district has worked very hard to identify and get their arms around the items that we had and minimize the number of exceptions that were there. And then there was immediate communication with the Chancellor's office and interaction, which I know the Chancellor's office takes as a clear sign that you're taking it very seriously and working through it. So I would expect all these items to be cleared up next year and
Okay, good.
hopefully no other consequences from that. Did want to identify the 2 other reports that we have issued at this point. The Prop 39 report, which is the Measure V Bond Construction Fund. I know you voted earlier this evening on appointing someone to the Citizens Oversight Committee. This is a kind of a dual-purpose report that occurs each year. There's a financial component to it where we identify the assets and liabilities and the revenues, typically from interest income, and then the expenditures, what you spent out of the fund this year. And then there's an agreed-upon procedures component that basically says we work with the Oversight Committee to say what things need to be tested, and really that's just kind of making sure that the money was spent for eligible items under the bond. And so clean opinion there, no findings, no recommendations, everything is as you would expect and hope for it to be. Of course, as of June 30th, for the year then ended, there was about $11 million spent out of the fund and about $9.5 million left. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the parking fees report is also in the packet, and that's a fairly straightforward additional element that we perform each year, and there were no unexpected outcomes there. Everything was clean.
Okay.
Okay.
I think each of us has paid our tickets, haven't we?
I have one outstanding.
Oh, there's one outstanding right there. Thank you.
I would like to thank Joe, Leslie, of course, who's leaving and has been wonderful to work with, Sharon, and all of the staff members, especially it seemed like this year in particular, we had to pull more people in from other departments and other areas, and they were all very helpful, especially towards the end as we were really pushing to get this wrapped up and meet a couple of the deadlines. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you. And this is just for consideration. I don't think we have to vote on this, do we?
Don't we have to approve the...
Should we
report?
accept it?
Yeah.
We just accept it, right? We
I would
don't.
move to approve item 7.1K.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Okay. Okay, any discussion about anything on here? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for all your work. It's good. Okay, business action items. Resolutions.
Okay. Actually, we can move on then to 7.2A, and the approval of the attached resolution for budget transfers between major objects. A budget transfer between major objects does not increase the overall expenditures of the adopted budget, but are routine adjustments to allow those with budgetary responsibility to reallocate funds to meet the changing fiscal needs in their area of responsibility. So it's routine adjustments that occur during the year.
Okay. Move approval. Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Resolution.
Oh, it's a resolution, and I had that in my head. Okay, go ahead, Angie.
Trustee Bloom?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee Gallardo?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Trustee Kugler?
Aye.
Trustee Macker?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Okay. 7.2B.
7.2B is the augmentation of revenue. Under the provision of the Ag Code, the approval of the attached resolution is requested by the Board of Trustees.
Okay. Roll call. We need a motion. Okay.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Now.
Trustee Bloom?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee Gallardo?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Trustee Kugler?
Aye.
Trustee Macker?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Okay. And 7.23, C.
7.2C is the specific transfers from unallocated ending balance into the restricted general fund and the construction fund. And these are detailed in the attachment.
Okay.
Questions?
Okay, is there a motion to accept?
Move approval.
Okay. Second. Okay. Thank you. And let's have a roll call.
Trustee Bloom?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee Gallardo?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Trustee Kugler?
Aye.
Trustee Macker?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
That was lucky because that required a five-person
Yeah.
vote.
Two-thirds.
Forgot to remind ourselves, but that was okay. Okay, D.
7.2D, you may recall the other night when I came by getting signatures. That was part of this process. Each year, we're required to update our authorized signature forms that are on file with the School Business Advisory Services. And these signatures authorize the individuals to sign orders in the board's name and must therefore be board verified and approved.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion? Second. Good. Okay. Yeah, roll call.
Trustee Bloom?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee Gallardo?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Trustee Kugler?
Aye.
Trustee Macker?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Okay. And 7.3A.
7.3A is the budget timeline for the 2013-2014 tentative and adopted budgets. And I know you have that in your packet. And this is an information item, so really, unless you have questions about it, I think it's just to inform you of what the schedule is. We are required to reduce it, and basically to see if you have any questions about it.
Okay. Is there any question or discussion? There were 4 items, I think, that have already happened, right? The question is, have they happened? It's a program review.
Yes,
we're
the
on
program
schedule, okay.
review, that has happened.
Mhm.
And they have been submitted. And we have distributed the zero-based budgets to budget managers. The program review committee actually did meet. We had our first meeting to
We're
review
right on schedule. That's-
resource requests. So we're into the budgeting process.
Okay. Any questions about this schedule?
And again, this was reviewed by the fiscal committee.
Okay. Should we move to accept it? Do you want to do that? It's really just for information.
Yeah.
Let's do it that way. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have nothing on information technology, no closed session. Anybody that wants to adjourn may go home and eat.
No.
No, you had something, that's
I would-
right.
I would like
Sorry,
to,
I have it written
I would
down.
like to move to adjourn.
That's right.
In honor of Dr. Charles Hanson, who served as our business manager at this college for many, many years and was very instrumental in much of the building process. And he passed away earlier this week, and I think it's appropriate that we adjourn the meeting in his honor.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, and we will adjourn the meeting in honor of Dr. Charles Hanson. Thank you.